My dad, he'd stopped paying his taxes. He did that on principle, and he only went to jail for it, not once, but twice. I had adopted my father's purpose for my life, and he said, Nathaniel, we need constitutional lawyers, to fight the taxes. I had two of these guys that I was helping doing a bathroom remodel, and I got a report from the homeowner. I get a call. Your guys went into my other bathroom and stole some of my prescription medications. I'm just like, I apologize. I don't know how, there's no way I can make this better. And she's just like, Nathaniel, you're right. And you know what? My brother actually overdosed on that exact same drug and killed himself. I wasn't poor. I never had a poverty mindset.
We objectively did not have money. We just didn't know it because we had love, we had a stable family, we had purpose, we were united. And it's John Hyre here interviewing interesting people. And so we've brought Nathaniel, not Nathaniel, Nathaniel Ealy, who in spite of being born in Michigan, improved his station in life by, moving elsewhere, Idaho namely. We've known each other for a few years, previously as a client, and now we're collaborating on the Augusta Rule, which we'll talk about, but isn't the really main point of the conversation. It's because Nathaniel's had a very interesting journey, and I think one that entrepreneurs can relate to, but not just entrepreneurs. One of the things I like about Nathaniel is he thinks. He's very well educated, both through schooling, but also self-educated, always looking for information, very thoughtful, and has accomplished a lot, especially given his comparatively young age, at least next to the geezer on the call. And so we'll get into all of that. Nathaniel, glad to have you here. Thanks for showing up and talking to my people.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the characteristic higher introduction. Thank you.
So yeah, look, what compliment is truly a compliment between men unless there's some backhand to it?
That's fair enough. Appreciate that.
So you grew up in northern Michigan.
I did, Traverse City. Yep.
And you had an interesting upbringing and some challenges in your upbringing, kind of what brought us together actually on the Augusta Rule. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I grew up in a completely blue collar family in northern Michigan. My dad was a carpenter, is a carpenter. He's still the same job full time that he's had for over 53 years now, master carpenter. And so we were raised with a dad who was the hardest working guy probably that I've still ever met. Just a fantastic role model in that way. Loved us deeply, and yet still my parents got a divorce when I was about 10. They were not able to see eye to eye on a lot of things, and had some generational issues that they weren't able to sort out, and that caused a lot of hardship for our family. And then also part of that was that caused my dad to really ratchet up his detestation of taxation in a rapid manner, and to the point where he'd stop paying his taxes. And he did that, on principle, still holds those principles, and will not pay federal tax. And he subsequently went to jail for it, not once, but twice, for those principles. Principles, which I happen to agree with, tactics we don't share.
So how long was he gone?
Let's see, the first time was about a year. I think the second time was close to a year and a half.
That must have been extremely disruptive.
Yeah, it was definitely not fun for mostly for him, but also tough for us. When he went to jail, I was already out of the house, so it was much more disruptive for my siblings than for me. I was an exchange student in Germany at the time. He went to jail for the first time.
And what took you away from Michigan? What took you on the path of virtue to a non-Michigan residence, which would be really any of the other 49 states, except maybe California? I would have to say, even compared to Michigan, California is a step down.
I might agree with you if you were only considering Southern Michigan, but I'm from the northern part where it's absolutely gorgeous. In fact, we took our family back there this summer, took a month-long road trip and spent most of it in Traverse City, and it is incredible. So if anybody ever talks bad about Michigan, you just got to visit Traverse City. Otherwise, I can't have a conversation with you about how bad Michigan is. But
so we'll just distinguish Michigan from
yes.
Ann Arbor.
That's right. Yes, that whole thing you can have it, from Grand Rapids south, whatever. But
What's my kids' bad influence on me? I graduated OSU, but so did the three of them. And we were talking before the call. I only watch football when my kids are around, and they're Buckeye fanatics, which evidently is the only kind made. I'm one of those aberrations. So what took you to Idaho?
You asked me a question. Yeah. So, well, where I moved first was Germany. So I got a scholarship. I actually was going to a youth group at the time. a Christian youth group, and we were in conversation after one of the get-togethers, and I had one of the guys I was talking with telling me how he's an exchange student, and I said, "Man, that would be so incredible. I've always wanted to visit another country and experience other cultures. I'm just so curious. I don't know what's out there. I've just been born and raised right here locally. I don't think I'd even been in an airplane until I was 16, one time." And he said, "Well, I got a scholarship." And I said, "Well, tell me about that. How'd you get that?" And long story long, I tracked it down. It was Germany only, which wasn't my intent or interest. But I called the high school he went to, and they gave me a number. I called that number. They gave me a number. I just tracked it down. Turned out to be a congressional scholarship. So it's basically a junior ambassadorship. 300 kids from the US and 300 kids from Germany would do an exchange every year, and the federal government paid for it. So I ended up winning the scholarship for Michigan, and I went to Germany for a year, all expenses paid. Lived with a family, learned how to speak German conversationally, which I still retain. And they also paid for about a half dozen trips where we did things like meet with the German Bundestag and actually have a kegger on the federal government's dime while underage at the embassy. So things like that.
So we have that in common. I went through Rotary almost 40 years ago. It'll be next year, it'll be 40 years that I was an exchange student in Hamburg. So it was still West Germany.
Yeah.
Und ich kann es noch, aber ich vergesse viel. Ich habe ganz viel verlernt, denn ich habe
Ja.
die Sprache nicht benutzt, aber so
Kann
geht's.
ich übe gar nicht, aber ich kann immer noch sprechen. Kein Problem.
Yeah,
Ist
it's you
illegal.
gotta practice it. And and the thing is with AI, it's becoming a luxury. I'd like to go back to there's a martial art I like a lot, and there's a big school for it in Southern Germany. I'd
Cool.
love to go back for 3 months and really pick it back up. The problem is language learning, it's good for you. It's good for your brain, anti-Alzheimer's, all that kind of thing. But it's a luxury. Increasingly with AI and Google Translate, and even these are the AirPods 3, they evidently translate on their own. In fact, my son was in Europe and he said they work just fine.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so it's becoming a luxury item. I'd love to do it, but it doesn't really add anything other than I want to do it.
Yeah.
But we do have that in common.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you went to, and I went for a different reason. I love history, and I was always curious from an early age, I'd say about 10 on,
Mhm.
how such a little country raised so much hell.
Mhm.
And so I was just very curious about what sort of culture would be this capable, which is horrifying to me to read about how bad their infrastructure is now
Mhm.
and how they've lost some of their old values, part of the decadence of the West in general. We have our own version, of course. So it's I look forward to going back and hopefully you can go relearn that. So you were there, then how did you end up in Idaho?
Yeah. Well, I had adopted my father's purpose for my life in terms of profession. And he said, "Nathaniel, we need constitutional lawyers, to fight the taxes." And I think he's right. I think we do need good constitutional lawyers. And so I thought, well, I think that's something I could be interested in. And so I was thinking along those lines. And so while I was in Germany, my host mom, who was just a wonderful lady, took me to the German court system, where I spent a day in the courts listening to court proceedings. And of course, the language is so technical, it was very challenging to understand, but I could pick up some things. And in Germany, they don't have a jury system, they have a triumvirate. So she was actually one of the lay judges. So you have the full time professional judge, and then you've got two others who are lay judges in lieu of what would be our jury system. And so she's there presiding. I'm sitting out in the behind the dock and listening. And out of the blue, out of nowhere, I literally hear what was to me an audible voice saying, "You are not going to be a lawyer, and you're going to New St. Andrews." And I was like, "What the heck was that?" And so I had my charismatic moment, and I thought that was the weirdest thing on the planet. Thought maybe I just ate a weird Wiener Schnitzel or something, but I had total peace, and I wrote it on a sticky note that that's what I was supposed to do, and I still have that sticky note. And so I started making arrangements to move to Idaho from Germany, even though I had no connection.
H- How old were you?
I was at that time 19.
Okay. I was there when I was 16, 17,
Mhm.
and I also had my tax lawyer moment there, but it was a voice that came from a body that was physically
Yeah,
present.
exactly. Mine
My
was weird. Yeah.
my guest father there, who was, it turns out, very high up in German business. We didn't know that at the time. He
Mm.
intentionally kept it from us. You know how that culture is, kind
Yep.
of, at least at the time, very modest, very self-effacing, don't rise above everyone else openly. And he said to me one day, we were having a drink, which was nice. I mean, at the time, I think it was 14, the drinking age. And he said, John, you know, you want to be a lawyer. I have a friend in Ascona and he has a house on the cliff on the elevator down to the lake. And he is a tax lawyer and speaks languages the way you do. You should do that. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then it worked with my politics. I don't
Mhm.
like the federal government. I don't like what they do with the money. I don't like, as I started to learn about the tax system. Plus, as you know, having been around me, what I liked about it was the chess game, the
Mhm.
ability to play a very complex game and win, and morally to keep money away from the government and with the people who created it. And so that kind of helped set my direction. I didn't realize it, but I kept thinking about it over the years. And when I went to law school, people were like, what are you going to do? I'm going to be a tax lawyer because
Yeah.
my guest father in Germany said something about elevators to lakes and it sounded cool.
Sounded good to
Never,
me.
yeah, I never got the elevator to the lake, by the way, but we'll get there. It's
Hey,
not over.
you're still spring chicken, man. Come on.
There you go. All right. So you went to this school.
Mhm.
Did you know about the school before you heard the name?
Yeah, so I'd actually heard about it and rejected it as an option previously. I actually came and visited. A friend of the family gave me frequent flyer miles. I visited about a half dozen schools around the country. I knew I wanted to go to a Christian college and be, basically pursue an education and become a lawyer. And I went to all of these schools. Again, somebody else gave me frequent flyer miles very generously. I got to visit them. And this particular school I went to one of their proceedings. The kids were giving these basically like a dissertation, at their gathering each week, and they're wearing robes and they're like super heady concepts, like way above me. And I'm like, this is not for me. And then they got together afterwards and they sang psalms on a Friday evening. And I'm like, this is not for me. Christian, not for me. I left, didn't think anything else of it. And then this was the first time I thought about it in a year. And I said, okay, great, I'm going out there. And the problem is, I was broke. I didn't have anything, like nothing, no money. My time in Germany, I think they tell you the parents you're supposed to fund your kids like $500 a month. My mom generously gave me $50 a month because that's what they can afford. And at the end of the year, my host parents were like, wait, how come? Wait, how did you pay for your time here? I was like, well, the scholarship. I know, but what about the rest? I was like, well, you guys paid for it. Like you guys took me everywhere and did like footed the bill. You wouldn't even let me like pay for anything. They're like, oh, I guess that's fair. And I was like, but I wouldn't be able to pay for anything otherwise. And they were laughing because you're supposed to have like a $500 a month stipend. And then I go to college and I have no money to pay for college. And my German host parents gave me an interest free loan for the first year of my college.
Wow.
Yep.
My, what people?
Yeah, no, they're awesome. I mean, I'm still in contact with them, and they've been out here for my wedding, when I got married, and yeah, still in touch. We plan to go visit them with the kids here in the next couple of years. Spend a month over there, and whatnot.
Amazing people.
So anyway,
So
that's how I found
how
it. I showed up in Moscow, Idaho, with a backpack, a guitar I didn't know how to play, and like a box or something like that, and a roommate I'd never met who was like a 29-year-old freshman. And then within months, I found out he didn't pay his bills, and I'm sleeping on the floor on a sleeping bag, and after buying my books and eating top ramen and going balder at an accelerated rate, and picking up side work just to pay my bills. And then I had to move out because I couldn't pay both of our rent.
it's funny, I had one of those in late undergrad, my senior
Yeah.
year of undergrad. My roommate discovered Amway,
Mm.
and he went whole hog. I mean, he was committed, and he decided that paying bills got in the way of his rising as a distributor. So he just stopped paying him. He was and he's normally a really nice guy, and just stopped paying, utterly unapologetic. This is what I need to do for my career. And so I'm covering it, and I was a bit of a pushover. I was really nice about it initially because I'm like, oh, okay. But then my parents found out, and they weren't. I was paying my own bills,
Yeah.
but they got involved with me about you can't let people treat you that way,
Mhm.
and so that just sounds familiar. So okay,
Yeah.
you understand
Same
then.
experiences here. Yeah, because I paid the bills for like a month or two, and I was like, dude, I literally can't. you know, I'm broke. Yeah.
So you understand tough times. Some of the stuff you went through as a kid, some of what you went through in college.
Yeah.
You had to have some will and some willingness to push forward.
I mean, yes, you can say that. And at the time, you don't think of it as tough times. You're just like, this is just what is. This is. So how do we navigate it? But yet, looking back, you can see that that would be what others would define as tough times. You can see the hardship in it. And I know that's where a lot of growth has come from in my life. In fact, the majority. That's just I love Jesus and believe the Bible, and the Bible tells us that that's what happens. You got to count it all joy when you face trials of various kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith will produce endurance or perseverance, and that produces perfection and maturity. And so that's the equation that is baked into reality. Regardless of your belief, I think that equation is there. That the trials are what make us. And at the same time, I didn't necessarily think of them as trials. It's kind of like some people might have said I was poor growing up. I wasn't poor. I never had a poverty mindset, right? I had a,
Yeah, we objectively did not have money.
yeah,
We just didn't know it because we had
correct.
love, we had a stable family,
Yeah,
we had purpose, we were united,
yep,
and we weren't starving. I mean, yeah, it was hand me down or secondhand
yep.
clothing a lot of the time, or shopping the sales and doing
Mhm.
what you had to do. But it's same thing at the time. We didn't realize that that was.
Yeah, you're just like this is, and you're like we were generally happy. Like I'd actually had my mom, was super tender and was trying to apologize for some things just over Thanksgiving here. Again, so sweet. And I was like, Mom, no, like we had such a great upbringing. You
Yeah.
loved us, you provided for us. Like,
No,
don't,
and if
like,
anything, the disease of our modern society is too much. People are so
yeah,
entitled and they have so much. And if some little thing that really isn't important is missing, they get very bent out of shape. I'm thankful, frankly, for the
yeah,
upbringing, including the adversity.
correct.
And
So that's
it was never terrible adversity. Thankfully, we were very fortunate in that, for example, none of us ever got that call from the doctor or from the hospital of, "Hey, you got a problem. Something bad is going on inside of you. You're not going to be around much longer," or
correct.
"You're going to be around and wish you weren't."
Yeah, yep,
So,
100%.
you're at this school and talking to you. So, how far did you grow up from Hillsdale? Where is that in Michigan?
Yeah. No, I was Traverse City is in the northern part and Hillsdale's in the southern. I bet you it's like, oh, I don't know, a 4.5, 5 hour drive
Okay,
south, something like that. So, oh yeah, I mean, I knew Hillsdale existed, and I was like, yeah, that's 25K a year back then. It's probably double that now. I'm like, 25K. Yeah, I'm not even gonna like ask. you know?
yeah, I'm about 24,900 short.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. It's like not gonna happen.
But it
Uh,
sounds like the place you went to had a very similar, from what you were telling me, very classical style of education.
I did. It is still it's a phenomenal institution. I mean, man, if you're looking for a place for your kids to be educated, check out New St. Andrews College. It is incredible. And at the time that I went, I literally went there not knowing if I'd get a degree, because I wasn't going there for credentials. I wanted to get educated. I was just curious. There's so many questions I didn't have answered. Like what's this thing with like the problem of evil? Like, why could a good God allow that? What's like, what do I believe about this? What do I think about that? How does this apply to politics or family or money? I mean, there's so many questions I had, and I wasn't getting answers to them where I grew up. And after I was directed here, because I didn't think I'd get answers here either, I just thought it was weirdo stuff. And came out, and that classical general studies liberal arts curriculum just gave me a really really rounded view of history and humanity and what's going on in the world today, and made me more curious, and I think chiefly equipped me to be able to teach myself. It taught me how to learn, essentially. So
Why does God allow evil in the world?
it's a great question, right? Yeah. Basically, from the bit that I know, which you can take with a grain of salt, is that just that verse I quoted earlier, which is James 1 verses 2. He allows us to have free will and to choose. He didn't want robots and automatons. He wanted people who are actually able to choose. He didn't want just dumb worship. He wanted us to choose to worship him. And so that by definition requires that someone is allowed to choose wrongly, right? You can choose good or evil, as it were. And so when evil is chosen by Adam in the garden, it tainted our entire race. And so now we are evil by nature, a part of us, and that needs to be redeemed. And so he allows evil because he allowed free will, is the short
Okay,
answer.
so that makes sense to me. I mean, you can't have, if you have free will, you have the ability to choose bad things. If we take away that ability to choose, we can make it so you're only good, but now you, by definition, you don't have free will. Your will is highly limited.
Correct. Yep. And so then the other ditch of that is determinism, where it's like, well, you have no choice. And so now everything you do is written before you, and there's no choice. And that's also a certain belief. I suppose some people might believe that. It's pretty shallow in my opinion, but it's mostly just a straw man. People like to beat on it. They point to certain theological trains of thought, and they say, well, that just means that you have no free will or no choice. God's ordained it all. It's like, well, the Bible actually describes both to us. The reality is that we have both free will and that God knows every choice we'll ever make. How that calculus works together is for him to understand, and that's the part we take on. That's the part I take on faith.
Well, that's part of the mystery because we are limited. We can't know everything. So there are
Correct.
things that are entirely possible, or they're and not just possible, there are things we observe and we just don't understand. I'll give you a very mundane example. I use the word advisedly. AI fairly recently created a drug. We instructed it to create a drug in a laboratory. It created a drug as instructed. And even though it created it, we still can't figure out how it did it. So we know the drug works. We test the drug. It does exactly what we wanted it to do. We try to reverse engineer how did the AI do this? Because we want to imitate it. We want to do the same thing. And we can't figure it out. We are limited. And
Interesting.
sometimes we just have to, that's, faith. I read a great book. I was just reading an article the guy wrote the other day. He's an atheist Jew, which should be a contradiction, but isn't.
Yeah. Fair.
And it's Jonathan Haidt wrote many good books, including The Happiness Hypothesis. And I think he does one of the best jobs of trying to intellectually probe what is happiness. But he's so intellectually honest. And this is old-fashioned liberal that I can respect. I won't agree with him on everything, but I can respect that he's an atheist. But he said, I researched, and people who have faith are happier and live longer.
Mhm.
And it's consistent. And I can't ignore that. And so he started to try and explore faith, which is a pretty darned open-minded thing to do for
Mhm.
an atheist. And he really took a good shot at it. There's a whole chapter in the book on how he views it and how he tries to wrap his arms around it to understand belief without believing. And he
Yeah.
eventually defines belief, like because if you don't know something, you have no choice but to either, you can shrug your shoulders and say, I just don't know, but that's a bit of a cop out. That's kind of easy
Mhm. Yeah.
because if you don't know with a capital K, you still have a sense,
Mhm.
you still have a feeling.
You still have
And now
assumptions and presuppositions.
what's dangerous is, what's scary is we don't know when that feeling is right or wrong. That's
Mhm.
hard because sometimes we have feelings and that's just wrong. You find
Yeah.
out later. And so that's the hard part. But then you start looking at what feelings humans have in common. And now we get into our C.S. Lewis and so on. Just an interesting, I think it's a book you would enjoy in terms of the meaning and how he tries to come at it and get his arms around the whole concept of faith without being faithful.
Yes.
But
No,
he
it is.
couldn't,
He's at least intellectually consistent, is what it sounds like, which
yeah,
is
just
rare
old
enough.
school.
Yeah.
Very old school. So he's written some very good things recently on social media and how it affects children. And I know you're very traditional on how you raise your kids. 5, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Good. I counted right when I was there then because there's such a hive of activity. I could have easily missed one, especially with the dangerous blondes running around doing dangerous blonde stuff.
Yep. Bunch of
So,
canines.
oh, you have a beautiful family. You've done a great job.
Yep.
It's so you get out of school.
Mhm.
And this is the part that threw me. So you get out of school, it was classic liberal arts,
Mhm.
not what to think, but how to think.
Yep.
And instead of going and being a pipe smoking philosophy professor, you decided to be useful and did what?
That is the conundrum of the liberal arts, isn't it? Yeah, no, I mean, because I had such you know, use your hand, like put your hands to work, put your body to work upbringing, you've got to go out and be a value creator, essentially. That there's nothing else I ever thought I could do. I have to go out and build things. That was baked into our DNA, I think, from a young age. And what I discovered was that I like building teams. I like building what end up being companies. But that was a journey. So what that looked like, first off, was me just experimenting. Well, I graduated a semester early, and by the time I walked with the rest of my class, I was debt free because I used that extra semester to pay off that first year's loan, and I had been able to pay for things along the way. Because I should back up, because one of the details we didn't say is when I went to this college, it wasn't even accredited. So when I signed up, I wasn't going to get a degree, but then they got accredited halfway through my tenure there. And so I
So you
graduated.
really were in it for the learning.
Oh, 100%. There was no degree coming my way when I signed up. Yeah. But then I got a degree when I graduated, and I was able to then become debt free by the time I walked with the rest of my class at the actual 4 year mark. But that semester that I had extra, I just tried to do things I always wanted to do. I always wanted to learn how to weld, so I walked into a welding shop and asked them to teach me how to weld. I didn't want to go to a year long course where I paid money and took a year to kind of just like really slowly chip away. I wanted to get thrown in from the deep end, and so I found a guy who would put me to work, and after 2 weeks, he started paying me. And guess what? Within 6 weeks, I learned how to weld at a level that was proficient enough for my goals and got paid to do so. And then I just kept doing things like that. I ended up doing odd jobs here and there for skills that I wanted to acquire, things I was interested in. I also did some traveling, traveled all over Europe, did some snowboarding for a month with family and friends and my host family. And then came back and was like, all right, I guess I need to get a job now. And it was one of the few times in my life when I didn't have a total plan, and somebody found out I had construction experience. It was a boom construction time. This is 2005, and so I got snatched right up and put to work, and became a crew foreman within a matter of months, and made that jump from just individual performer to leading a small team, which is always a totally different job regardless of industry. And then it was my second to last day in the field, so I got headhunted again by a guy who wanted me to launch a brand new construction company for him. And he had land. He was designing a 77 lot development.
How did this guy know you? Why did he pick you? How did he know you?
Yeah. He met me at church. So he had met me at church and knew of me and knew of, what I was doing and my reputation. He probably asked a bunch of people about me. So, relationships. And he just took me out to lunch and asked me a bunch of questions. And most of the questions revolved around, yeah, but why aren't you already working on your own? Why don't you already have your own company? Because he just couldn't figure it out. And in my mind, that was never a paradigm, right? I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. My dad was a carpenter and, amazing at what he did, but not business minded. And I didn't have any training or thoughts along those lines. I was just, wanting to work in whatever form and create value. And so he exhausted his questions and finally was just like, well, I'm hiring you then, excuse me. And so he engaged me. And instead of getting a regular paycheck, though, I said, hey, look, I'll work for you, but I want equity. And to this day, I don't know where that thought came from, but I wanted to own what I was working on. Excuse me, I got a tickle. And so I'm launching a company for him. I wrote a business plan and I worked with an architect, designed 4 super cutesy, hyper efficient homes where we designed them down to the point where we knew every 2x4 in the house. Like each of the walls was laid out, every detail. And then business plan, same thing. He sent me to meet with a 100 millionaire business guy to like review my business plan and get input. And I got exposure to all kinds of cool.
And so to be clear, none of your education, let's change the word, none of your schooling taught you how to do a business plan or how to design a house.
No, none.
So you just figured it out.
Yes. I mean, I'd already had 7 years carpentry experience, so I could speak the language of carpentry for sure. Business, I had zero.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay, so 7 years of carpentry experience. So this guy discovered you. How old were you?
I was 22.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you've been helping out with carpentry since you were a teenager,
Oh, yeah.
15.
I've been working with my dad. I mean, I got my first pay for actually doing useful work at 10 years old. And so when I say
Got it.
7 years experience, that's like summers all the way growing up and then, extra work in between as I got older.
Okay. So you're discovered, you're finishing off. How was your last day of work as a 1099
Yeah.
contractor before you went in with this guy
Okay.
that discovered you?
So the second, literally, I had 24 hours to go in construction, and I am a idea guy, like super quick start on a 0 to 10 scale of quick start. I'm a 10, and so I get distracted easily. And one of those distractions was a girl, not my wife, because I hadn't met her yet, in the parking lot of a vet clinic. We were finishing out. I think it's a girl because I actually don't remember, because the punchline is that I cut off 2 fingers on a table saw with 24 hours to go in the field. So I had 1 day left in the field and decided to lop 2 fingers off on a table saw. That's its own story. We don't have time for that here, but it was actually pretty funny, and I've had endless jokes from it in retrospect. So if you meet me somewhere, don't be afraid to make a joke. It's great.
So there are easier ways to lose weight.
There are easier ways to lose weight. Yes, it was horrible in that regard. Yeah, but in all other respects, I just laugh at it. And anyway, after those healed up, because this was basically, I think it was December 15th, 2005. And so 20 years ago, almost to the day, coming up here in a couple weeks. And after going through the healing up and Christmas break, I just started for this guy immediately, with these big beehive bandages, like two little mini turbans on these nubs, and launched this company and did the business plan. Worked with the city to design the 77 lot layout so that they could actually accommodate that many lots with parking. Worked with the architect to design the homes. Started talking to potential buyers. You know, and remodeled a Main Street office space to be the new sales room after hours. So I was working 12 hours a day and loving it and learning a ton. And it all went to my head, and I got super prideful, and I got fired for being prideful, and I deserved it.
Did you think you deserved that at the time? How long did it take you to figure out you had it coming?
Well, I always share the side of the story that I'm responsible for. There's a whole other side of the story for other factors. I mean, mention some roughly, but you'd have to talk to the other guy to get those. You always want two sides of the story to understand the truth, right? So I'm owning my side, which is I was prideful. His side, he could own some things himself. I think the writing was going to be on the wall anyway. There was a recession already on the horizon, right? This is 2007. So we're already hearing stuff from, down in California. The end of the story is the development never got built. The company never got formed. It got mothballed with me. But I got fired and I deserved it. Yep.
And so then what?
Yeah. So then I had great relationships in town still. I've always made a point of being curious, talking to people, asking questions, and so I was getting counsel as I was getting fired because it was a process. And because of that counsel and shared relationships, and really some arbitration that went through our church, because he attended as well, I ended up getting at least a paycheck, kind of. I got $16,000. So that was enough to buy some tools and outfit a truck that my grandpa had given me, and do carpentry and construction on my own. And because of the relationships I had, I literally, my first job was like a $300,000 historic remodel. Because one of the guys that was counseling me was like, well, hey, I hear you're out of a job, come remodel my house. So that got me launched. And within 6 months, I had 5 team members, because I knew a bunch of other guys who needed jobs. And, it was all 1099, no employees.
Where were you at then? Where were you at then in terms of humans? Because one of the things I like about you, and this is now where we're different, I'm a great loner. I'm very good at being a loner.
Mhm.
And then I periodically interact with people and I'm reminded why that is. And I've gotten better, but it's been a much slower evolution.
Yeah.
So you're out of this job. How old are you now?
So that was what, a year after college. So I'm 23 going on 24. Yeah.
Okay,
No,
so you start this new company, you've got this new
24,
remodeling job.
24 when I started my own thing. Yeah.
How did you know how to build a team? Because now this for me is mystery because I'm still figuring it out. That's
Yeah.
just not something that comes naturally to me. So
Mhm.
so where did that come from?
Yeah. So I didn't know how to build a team. I didn't know the first thing. I hired guys who wanted a job, who could work. And that definition of who could work was also loose, as the next decade would show. So basically, I just screwed things up, left, right, up, and down for the next decade, John. I have hired people who don't have a driver's license and found out later that they have a that they don't have one. I hired one of the apex of my hiring was hiring somebody whose wife was actively on trial for voluntary manslaughter, and did not know it. And then what else? I've hired drug addicts, alcoholics. I've hired, you name it, well over 100 guys, probably 200, and did most of it wrong, and just wouldn't quit, and basically had a glorified. So if I fast forward the story, I had those 5 guys, and then I think I had 8 or 9 guys when 2009 came. And 2009 is when the Great Recession finally arrived at my little college town. Even though you could see it like miles off for 18 to 24 months, I didn't. and I was abdicating my responsibilities. At that point, I was like, oh, I hate this construction thing, or I hate the carpentry. I like construction. I like the industry. I hate carpentry. I just hold up in my office, read these business books, which I found fascinating, but didn't really apply a lot of. I would just read them and think, huh, that's interesting. Well, we're not going to do it that way. Again, very prideful, also very foolish, and ran that into the ground. By 2009, when the recession hit, I had to lay off all my guys because we actually had finally made them employees, which cost more money. We weren't charging anywhere near enough. I mean, it was a joke. My bids would be like whatever the job cost plus 10%, and I had like a slight margin on the guys when they were 1099 and no margin when they're employees.
Yeah, no, we're coming back into familiar territory where, I said you and I are different, but now
Yeah,
some of what
man.
you're saying, I'm like, all right, we got more in common than
Oh,
I
dude.
thought. Because
Oh, it's
I,
disaster.
some of the stuff I did,
Yep.
especially my first decade, first 15
Yeah.
years, in terms of
Mhm.
hiring decisions, and it just feels right, and
Yeah.
yeah, and it wasn't, but
No, totally wrong people. Not, and I'm terrible at hiring to this day because I'm always like, this is the best place to work on the planet. This is the best company. We have so many prospects. It's growing. Why would you not want to work here? I'm a salesman, and salesmen are terrible at hiring. So basically, what happened, fast forward, is I lost the whole team, laid them all off, got married that same year. My brother-in-law is turning to my now wife and saying, "Can this loser provide for you?" and having to shovel a teeny little inheritance she got into the debt hole and work off the rest and kind of launch our life together, in a little $550 a month apartment with a car that her brother gave us, and kind of build from there. And then for 3 more years thinking, I hate carpentry, I got to get out of this, and just kind of stumbling along and doing whatever work came my way with my belt on while the country tried to heal up from the Great Recession. And finally, after 3 years, I was just like at the end of my rope. And had a mentor who was giving me counsel, an incredible guy. And he was just so patient, would listen to me and encourage me, and did that for like 3 years. And finally, I was just like, all right, God, if you want me to be a carpenter the rest of my life, I'll do it. Oh, just felt so crushed. But I just said, I have fought this for 3 years. I've had multiple job offers, at least 5 job offers that went like multiple interviews, and like, we want you, would like chase me down, and I just wouldn't have peace and I wouldn't take the job. And I just was waiting for that peace to go somewhere else. And I never got it. And then after saying, okay, I will not resist that, for 3 years, I just started doing the carpentry and just saying, thank you for carpentry. Thank you for carpentry, even though I didn't like it. And then realized that I had all this background of reading these business books I didn't apply. I loved that. Why can't I just love that in the context of carpentry? And then I started thinking in terms of business, actually trying to build a team, still screwing it up every way because I tried to reinvent the wheel always. I always tried to reinvent the wheel, John. It was one of my biggest failures.
which is what you call pride. In other words, there are these people who know, and you're not listening.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so how long did it again, so we still have a lot in common, because I clearly have pride issues. The the what changed? What happened? When
Yeah.
did this happen, and what happened?
Yeah. What changed is I had two of these guys that I was helping. So one of the paradigms I also had is that I had a bunch of what I call head trash. There are lies that I believed. I actually have a whole talk I give on this. I've got, spoken to the Regional Contractors Association on this. The lies that you believe that hold you back. And so one of the lies I believed is that I always needed to help some people in my business. And what that looked like, the example I had growing up, is we always had a guy who is an alcoholic or drug addict on the team, at least one, and we were always helping that person growing up. Sometimes they'd show up to work, sometimes they wouldn't show up to work, sometimes they'd show up drunk or high, sometimes they would be sober. But that was the paradigm I had, so I repeated that. So I didn't try to reinvent the wheel there. I adopted that one. Of all the things I wanted to keep, that was one I kept. And so I had two of these guys that I was helping doing a bathroom model for a sweet couple here in town. And I get a report from the homeowner. I get a call, and she says, Nathaniel, your guys went into my other bathroom and stole some of my prescription medications. They were like Oxycontins or hydrocodones or something like that, an opioid. And I said, no way. It just made me feel sick. And she said, I want you to come over and address it. And I said, absolutely. So I drove over there and met with the guys, interviewed them. They lied their faces off. I couldn't even tell they're lying. I mean, they're such good liars. But I went and got drug P tests, made everybody P tests, even subcontractors that had worked with me for a decade that I totally trusted. Super embarrassing. Everyone was clean except for these two guys who were lying to me so well I still couldn't tell. I get rid of these guys. I turn to the homeowner. I'm just like, I apologize. I don't know how, there's no way I can make this better. And she's just like, Nathaniel, you're right. And you know what? My brother actually overdosed on that exact same drug and killed himself. And it was just like, that was the end of the conversation. And I wanted to vomit, John. I was like, this will never happen again. Whatever we're doing, this is wrong. And I've been doing this for a decade. I can't keep doing this. This has been a nice hobby job. I'm working hard enough that it's paying me, good income, probably like 150K a year at the time, just because I was working my tail off, getting phone calls all the time on vacation, never be able to get away from it, and trapped in my paradigm. And I just said, this is it. And we paid a consultant an exorbitant sum of money, basically to review everything we were doing and tell us to do all the things I had learned in the business books that I wasn't doing. And so it was basically just a self-discipline tax.
Pain teaches. One of the things I told my kids, especially my son, because he challenged me as only a young man could.
Mm-hmm.
And there's happy endings, you've met him and so on. But he, boy, did he push us. And I told him, I wish you a lot of pain and no harm. And I even made that up on my own. I just was, because after watching my own life of, I learned by bashing my head in the wall until it's bloody. And then all of a sudden it's like, why am I feeling dizzy? Why is everything getting dark?
Mm-hmm.
And he challenged us, but he still remembers it. He didn't make the distinction. Pain teaches, and I don't wish you the harm, although you're probably going to have some of that as well. So for you, it was having to test all these good people, having to face this woman that this was a very personal thing to her.
Yeah.
And finally paying for what you'd already been hearing. It's just you had to pay more. It's like having a gym coach. Right? You won't do it yourself. You got to have a gym coach that you pay a whole bunch more to get you to show up, it's very much human nature.
Totally. It's the same self-discipline tax. I literally, when I signed up for the gym locally, I literally went in and said, Pat, this gym membership is my self-discipline tax. Verbatim. Yeah, it's 100%.
Like it's self-discipline tax. I can either have self-discipline or I can pay the tax for not having
it. And I actually think it's a tool we actually need to wield. We should pay a self-discipline tax a lot of times because, you put your money where your mouth is, but you also put your mouth where your money is.
Mm. Oh,
so sometimes you got to lay the money down, and that's a lesson that I've learned, among many. But at that point, I just said, this is it. We paid those consultants, and they, like I said, told us to do the things we already knew to do and weren't doing. We did them, and that was 2017. 2017 is when we turned the ship around, and we actually launched a business instead of a hobby job. So
what was different? What were some of the things that were different? Because the thing I've noticed about you, one of the reasons I wanted you to speak to my audience, because everybody struggles with this and much more besides, you are one of the best implementers I've ever seen.
Oh, thank
especially
you.
When it comes to building a team, but just getting things done and getting results. For the longest time, I was just amazed. I didn't think this could be done. This is where you've now surpassed me. I am very good at what I do technically.
Very good.
In terms of leading a team, not my thing. And maybe one day it will be, and it's there. The way you organize things and made it so you could actually not be in your business, the classic, right? Work on your business, not in your business. And correct me if I'm mistaken, and I know you don't like to be prideful, but let's also be truthful. I think you accomplished it.
Yes, by many metrics, we did. We've had a self-managing company since about 2021, 22. Yeah, let's say 2022. Yep, almost 4 years now.
Okay, so there was some time where it wasn't self-managing, but you were making it so it could be.
It took us 5 years to get essentially.
What are some of the keys to that?
Yeah.
What changed? What did you learn?
Number one is you have to identify the lies you're believing and kill them systematically. So literally like, okay, well, what is helping? Well, in my definition, loving these guys was hating my clients. And I had to face that and tell the truth about it. I thought, well, I don't need to market because I have plenty of work. I generally had the work I needed, but because I wasn't marketing, I wasn't getting the ideal clients that would allow my business to grow, that would allow me to charge the amount of money I needed to charge to attract A-list talent, right? So I had limiting beliefs around what I could charge. I had limiting beliefs around that I needed to market or not market. about what helping was. And there are a number of other ones. And I think every business owner needs to identify those and slay them. And they can do that by reading. They can do that by, paying a self-discipline tax, and they can do that by just screwing up until they're fed up with what they're doing. And I
You know,
recommend the former more than the latter.
I had my eyes opened, as you know, fairly recently, and was working in that direction. You're always trying to do the work. Um, in a week or two, we're going to have Larry the Seal
Hmm.
on here. And I told you about him. I went up into the hills of Utah with 3 other very high performing people. And it's funny how you put it, because he talks about our untruths, what our subconscious believes. And our subconscious is there to protect us, but not to make us happy or
Hmm.
successful. It's designed to keep us safe, but it has a very odd definition of safe. For example, if you do nothing, you're quite safe. You're just doing nothing.
Yep.
And so having him in his relentless fashion dig into everyone's head, and it was really better in a group because everybody was open and vulnerable. It was actually weirdly easier in
Hmm.
a small group of high performers. And he got into our untruths, what you call the lies we tell ourselves, that you don't always realize you're doing it until you do. And then he started digging into what are your truths.
Hmm.
That's been life changing for me, and that's
Yeah.
still a fairly recent event.
Hmm.
That event is less than a year ago for me.
Yeah. And it should be life changing because they're basically cages you're building for yourself. I built a cage.
What are what's some of the reading and some of the people that you would recommend that people actually listen to, and
Mhm.
listen to whether they're reading it in their head or verbally or face to face? What have been some of the best sources for discovering
Yeah.
what are your lies and what are the truths?
Yep. It's really going to be industry specific, I think, for the things that are going to be most pointed for people, but just general ones. I mean, you got to start with the Bible in my world. I mean, number one, you got to, whether you believe it or not, it is the number one book in Western culture, and there's so much there. Um, and then from there, I mean, in terms of some general books, oh man, I would probably read "Thou Shalt Prosper" by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. So Jewish guy, not a Christian, but oh my goodness, his 10 Commandments of making money are so good. That's a phenomenal book. You gotta stop believing that earning money is a bad thing. If you want to actually make money, let's put it that way. And he's really helpful at just waving the fart stink of socialism out of any room. So fantastic book. And then some other ones, if you want to launch something, I'd say Zero to One by Peter Thiel is a seminal work. That is just such a fantastic book. So I mean, I could name a bunch of others, but I would say those are two that are great. Also, if you're getting into business for the first time, Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth Revisited, or just The E-Myth, just fantastic. So there's
Any other classics that come to mind? Keep going, because I
oh,
mean, look, a bibliography, a source of wisdom. I mean,
yeah. I
how
mean,
much did you pay to learn that
oh,
these are the way?
I couldn't even quantify it at this point. I mean, my mistakes have cost me millions for sure. Yeah, many, many times over. But let's see some other books that are just like absolutely fantastic read. I would say if you're scaling an organization, again, like what are you doing? Where are you at? Where are you going? But if you're scaling an organization, there's a book called, I believe it's called The Outsiders. It's like 8 CEOs and their unconventional way of doing business. And I'm probably murdering the title. But I think it came out in like 2012-ish or something like that. It is a phenomenal book about 8, industry titans who just destroyed the returns that were occurring within their industry within a 20-year time frame or so, and how they did that and how they were different than the traditional narrative, than what PE was telling people, or what the talking heads were saying. It is just fantastic. They talk about decentralized leadership. They talk about being frugal within the business, but also growing through acquisition. I mean, it's a fantastic book. So
What biblical lessons had you ignored in hindsight, thinking about
right,
what you already knew and what
yeah.
you were brought up on? What did you, as part of your untruths, ignore?
Yeah. Well, it's the kind of the classic thing of what I've mentioned already. I was too prideful. And so I was ignoring, killing my own pride. And I was also, reinventing the wheel, which is another form of pride, and another, a counsel that the Bible gives us repeatedly, especially in Proverbs, is to seek wise counsel. And while I was seeking some counsel, I was ignoring the majority. So I would say that's the big picture. Like, and anything else I do now going forward, I try to achieve best practice metrics before I reinvent anything. So I want to see that I can actually hit what others are saying are benchmarks, the way that they say to hit them, and then reinvent. If that
Okay,
makes
and
sense.
that's where it's going to be industry specific. In
That's
other
very
words,
specific. Yep. Yep.
have somebody that already knows the benchmarks.
Mhm.
Got it.
Totally.
That makes
And if I'm seeking counsel, there's two metrics for that. It's what I want to do, but it's also how I want to do it. So if I want to learn from someone, I want to find somebody who's going to teach me what I want to do, how I want it done, because there's all kinds of ways you can approach things. And some of those are not going to align with my core values or my philosophy of life. And I don't want to learn from that person. And I don't think that's prideful. I think that's actually in keeping with the mission of success, because we all have our own definition of success and we need to be super clear about that. Otherwise, we will certainly miss it. So, yeah. Anyway,
and
what was the question you were asking that I don't think I answered entirely before the book recommendations?
bugger me if I don't recommend. I don't. I got
Yeah.
so engrossed in where you went.
Okay, great. Keep going then. What
Yeah,
else?
yeah. So so you have a successful construction business.
Mhm.
You've had your challenges.
Yep.
Then you got into short-term rentals, regular rentals, short-term rentals.
Yeah. So we had gotten into short-term rentals actually all the way back in 2008. So we had gotten into those while we were still screwing things up in construction. So I don't know, flipped or something. I don't know, maybe 15 or so houses. So not a ton, but enough to know what to do. And part of that is because I can walk into a house and estimate what the repairs will take and what they'll cost within 10% of the value within a 15-minute walkthrough. And so we made money on every single flip. And we had some investors for some of them, most of them, and we always paid them back on time, every time, what we promised or better. And so that made it easy for us to have cheap capital within 24 hours, unsecured, just because of trusted relationships. And so we had some success on those, but we kept the half dozen rentals that made sense for us to keep long term, that would be low maintenance and have the right margins. So we have a half dozen long term rental properties, and we flipped the ones that didn't make sense for that. Starting from 2008, I stopped doing that a few years ago. It just didn't make sense for me to put the effort in my market anymore. Prices are so inflated. The lending costs are so high comparatively. So my real estate investing track record looks incredible because I started investing in 2008 and I, basically stopped investing in 2022. So it looked like a good run.
Yeah, that timing matters quite a bit.
Yeah, there's timing. So yeah.
Thoughts about family, because again, observing you when I went up to visit you, and we'll talk about why I went up to visit you, and I was just paying attention, and I was struck by how much time you're able to spend with your family and how intentional you are about parenting. So, but now some of it's making sense to me because you're a parent, but you've had some experience with people. You finally started paying attention to the experience with people and what others had to teach you about it. That's
Mhm.
why you were able to build a business that largely ran itself, which gave you the time.
Mhm.
Now, because this is all making sense to me now. And you'd been observing people and figuring out how to build teams. And the most important team is at home.
Yes.
I mean, 'cause
Yes.
I love your family. I was just so impressed by what really good kids you're raising. What a marvelous wife. I figured this guy must be all right if he married up the way he did.
Yep. Totally. My wife is incredible. She's been the lion's share of God's grace to me since I met her. So, but yeah, no, you're right though, that the primary team is the one at home. If things aren't restful at home, how can you possibly be maximally productive at work? I mean, it's incredible the handicap so many people are operating under because of the chaos that they have at home. And the irony is if they applied their unique ability that they're applying at work at home, they'd probably be able to address a large share of the dysfunction. Now, will that happen overnight? Probably not, almost certainly not. But think about how you think about business and how you invest in business and the returns that you're hoping for down the road. And what if you had that same mindset at home?
So besides the obvious, the Bible, because I
Mhm.
know you live a very biblical life at home, any other reading you would suggest in that genre? Because you mentioned how you build the teams, how you set the metrics vary based on industry. And I don't know that home we would call a different industry, but it's certainly a different thing. And I can't imagine that you haven't studied it. So, what have you studied?
Yeah. I mean, certainly we've read other books, but I honestly don't have the same list that I would for business. I would say we've received most of our teaching on home and family life from our local church. Um, Now, there are some books. Our pastor is a prolific author, so a lot of his books would be great. His name is Doug Wilson, so you can Google him. You'll find all kinds of controversy and interesting tidbits because he does stand up for what he believes, which we love about him, um, and he represents us quite well. But so he has a number of books on um, marriage, family, child rearing that we've greatly been blessed by. And then we've combined that with how we think about business and teams and organizations. So let's talk about a concrete example. We have a giant touchscreen kind of TV in our pantry, and all the kids each have a column, and they all have their tasks on those columns, and they have to go and touch them off that they're complete each day. And so we've scheduled out what's expected of them. We've trained them on what's expected of them. We've given them a means of a cadence of accountability and a means to check off if it's done or not. And there are attendant blessings and curses, shall we say, for doing so. So reward, carrot and stick, reward or punishment. And so the kids have clarity in what to do, and because we took the time to put that down and put it into a system, we no longer have to be there constantly hounding them to the same degree. I'm not saying that we don't have to be there shepherding them, because we do, but that's one element. Or another example is my oldest just turned 13, and so I spent about 4 months preceding that birthday planning, because one of our definitions of success is that our children will be able to live on their own at 16. I'm not saying they will, but that they'll be equipped if they needed to, and by definition, to live on their own at 16. And so we reverse engineered what would need to be true up until that point, and wrote it out. And so we put them in categories, spiritual, financial, work, relationships, etc. And then gave her a year's worth of basically homework and experiences that she needs to do while she's 13, and what success will look like and what failure will look like and what the attendant carrot and stick will look like for either of those. And we built in rewards along the way. And so now we're just rolling that out, and it's always imperfect when you start. It's our first one that we're doing this. It's the first system. I was just going over this with her yesterday, and there's some things that we're missing, so we're course correcting. But there's a cadence where I'm meeting with her, I'm checking in with her, and we're saying, how do we make this better? How do we course correct? How do we change things and make them better? And it's a conversation, and it's ongoing, and there's attention that is carved out on my calendar to put towards that, because that's part of our success.
Well, from what I've seen, it's working. And again, yeah, I don't want to help you be prideful, but you can take a little bit of satisfaction. Look, you're clearly putting in the time,
Mhm.
the thought, the thoughtfulness, the effort. It was really a pleasure to see. It struck me. It was one of the reasons I wanted to invite you and just have you talk about that.
Yeah, my pleasure. No, I'm happy to talk about it more. I mean, the irony is that a lot of us in business, we might be, crushing it dollar wise, and have being crushed, relationally. And I mean, that's not my definition of success, and I doubt it's most people's. I mean, really, Dan Sullivan as strategic coach does a great job defining, in very, very broad terms, success for entrepreneurs, and that's essentially four freedoms. It's freedom of money, it's freedom of time, it's freedom of relationship, and freedom of purpose. So we all want those four freedoms if we have entrepreneurial leanings, and so those aren't success for everybody, but that's a very, very basic definition of success for most of the entrepreneurs out there. Yeah.
Let, let's start winding it up.
Yeah.
The way we've gotten to know each other is we're working on a project together.
Mhm.
Your passion, we both share a passion for taxes based on our backgrounds. We have reasons to want to see the feds get less,
Mhm.
lawfully, legally get less. And we've been working together on that. For those of you who follow me, I've talked about an app I'm involved with, and all I do is the tax brain part, which is what I'm good at. Everything else Nathaniel does, and everything else is quite a long list. And so the app is out. It the object is, so with the Augusta Rule, it seems so simple. It's all over the internet, which of course means there's so much that's wrong. Bottom line is you rent your home to your business. You can rent it to certain businesses, not others. The business gets a tax deduction if you do it right, and the rent you receive is not taxable. So it's a net savings. The biggest problem with it, and we saw it in a fairly recent case, it was the second Augusta Rule case. By the way, Nathaniel, until recently, I thought it was the first Augusta
Oh,
Rule case. And there's actually another one, but it was much more brief. So it wasn't really noticed, and there was a bunch of other stuff in it. I was out on the internet the other day, and I was researching, figuring out, just putting the final touches, yes, finally, on partnerships, tax partnerships, limited partnerships, LLCs. What are the rules? Because I've got it down. Who's this? You have to have a separate person in order to have your business lease from you. Your business has to be viewed as a separate person. There's clear law, which took a while to find, that says you. It's common sense, but you still have to find law that says you can't lease from yourself. It has to be under tax law a different person, but it's not always clear which entities are different people or not. That actually took me a lot more time to figure out than I thought it was going to. So I was out searching for the last piece of the puzzle: LLCs, partnerships, LPs. Somebody posted a list that someone else sent me. And first thing I did was check the list, because here's what I look for, what I've learned. With AI, it hallucinates, especially on case law. I don't know why. I have a sense of its reasoning, its logic of why it hallucinates on case law, but I've learned to check. Any case I get, I check. And so I went and looked them up. There were 9 of them. Every single one was wrong. So I put
wow.
a I went and tracked the original post. I did a search and found who made the post. It was a CPA. And I put on his LinkedIn, you have to be very careful with AI, and you're mistaken on these cases. And I thought you would want to know that. And here's how to check for it and discover.
Mm,
And then I sent him a PM and said, "Hey, I hope I'm not being a jerk. I don't mean to come on your site. It's just I would want to know.
mhm.
I don't mind being wrong as long as I'm wrong briefly.
Yep.
I want people to tell me. I want to know when I'm wrong, because
Mhm.
then I can change it and be right.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give people false information." And he was very gracious. He actually thanked me and said, "No, you could have roasted me and you didn't." And we got to chatting. Here's what I found. I haven't talked to you about this, by the way. What's accelerating things greatly for me
Mhm.
is the reason it hallucinates is it goes out and it doesn't predict the next word correctly. Because right now, all large language models do is predict the next word. It doesn't actually think.
Yeah.
And in some contexts, it's very good. For example, it's really good with contracts. You still have to know some things. You can't rely 100% on it. But in terms of predicting the next word in a contract, it's good. And there's a large sample size. Predicting the next word in a case or a case description, especially if the case has a common name, Smith,
Mm,
Jones, etc. But even in the weird cases, it doesn't predict the next word in the summary.
mm,
So I just went out and found, Lexis has an AI. I was paying 200 for the fancy version of chat, and I'm going to get the Lexus AI, which is only 300. So it's only 100 more,
mhm.
and it doesn't hallucinate because it's trained on only actual cases. It doesn't go out and pick up cases from everywhere,
Mhm.
including publications that are poorly written. Because one of the things when I prompt AI, I tell it, don't listen to IRS sources, partly because they're biased, but actually the larger reason is they're very poorly written, and it
Mm,
confuses the AI, and it comes to false conclusions based on poor writing. Second, I found that a lot of the good information is behind a paywall, and AI cannot see it.
yep.
And so now I've got Lexis, which by definition is a big paywall, but already has a corral of cases that are actually correct.
Mhm.
So the time it's going to save me, because I've spent hours, you have to look at the case, you have to see if it's real manually, and then
Mhm.
you have to see if what it says and what the AI says are the same. That takes hours.
Yeah.
And this, I wish I would have known about this. So do you. I wish I would have known about this earlier, but now I know.
Yeah.
And so I haven't tested it yet. I'm going to test it in the next few days. But all the reviews I'm reading online, because I did have AI go get into the Reddit sites
Mhm.
and tell me, how can I have less hallucination? And by the way, the intermediate step was I started having another AI check the AI.
Mhm.
So I would use, for example, chat, get the cases, have Grok check it, and it
Yep.
would pick up most, but I still had to check it myself, but the check was faster because the second AI could also hallucinate on its check.
Mhm.
So the speed at which it's learning. But what we have managed to do for those of you out there, and I'll let Nathaniel, you say your piece on it as well, The compliance is where it's at. In both Augusta Rule cases, the problem was not the rule. It's legal to rent your home tax-free, no income to you if you rent correctly, to your business, if it's the right kind of business, if it's structured the right way. For example, C corps and S corps are a no-brainer. But you have to document it. And the documentation becomes so cumbersome that, and that's how the IRS gets you 97% of the time. I just interviewed last week an IRS attorney. Every one of them I talk to agrees. It's 96, 97, 98% of the time. The way the IRS tags you is not that you didn't deserve the deduction. It's in the code. It's there to be earned. It's that you couldn't prove it.
Hmm.
And what Nathaniel's idea was, to be clear, where the idea started, he started an app, and the idea of, if we can systematize it and make it so that it documents what you're doing, so that it just literally transmits the information to your CPA so they can do the return, explains to them why it's legal and legit, because CPAs get a little squirrely and nervous around such things, and also has a file built in that if there's an audit, we hit print. Here's my goal, Nathaniel, with this. The first time we get audited, first time one of our people gets audited, I had an engineer back in Columbus who used to do assignments for those of you who aren't into real estate. He used to go get a contract on a property, and instead of closing on the contract and buying the property, he would sell the rights to the contract. In other words, assign the contract to someone else and take the spread.
Hmm.
He got audited by the IRS as an engineer. This was glorious. He got the letter at 3 p.m. or so on one day. By that evening, it was around 11:30 or so, that he had texted me, and he said, I've got the full everything, all receipts, all bank statements. I've got a spreadsheet that goes through every single thing they ask, and I'm missing 1.74% of the documentation. But I know that I'm entitled to over 98% of my deductions. And so what I did, and this is what I'm looking forward to doing with the app that you're mostly responsible for, like as in 90% plus, is to take that. What I did with this engineer is I took the sheaf of paper to the IRS auditor's office, and I had to wait. I actually had to get let in because of all the security protocols. And I just called her and texted her, and not texted, I called and faxed, because that's, the IRS is that primitive. And I was in the front office, and I just waited until they let me in. And I said, here's the stack. I gave the whole stack of what the engineer had done. And it was funny. She just looked at it. It was like a phone book, and she just leafed through it like, and just dropped it on the desk. We then flirted for 2 hours. She did not want to, because no, she had, I talked to IRS agents who are retired, and they said, yeah, she had a certain amount of time allocated to the case. You blew that out of the water. Like, she had another 20 hours set aside, and it's just done. So she figured she was going to have 2 hours of relaxing and be 17 hours ahead. And so, we got to BSing and flirting, and I billed the client to flirt. And I told him, if it would have been a dude, I still would have flirted because you're my client, but it would have cost you extra. There's a premium for that. Uh, that's what I want to do.
Hmm.
The way that you've set this app up, we should be able to print whatever we need
Yeah.
and have it to that agent within 24 hours. And the psychological impact on an agent, when you come up with, they're counting on you not having the proof. It's not that you don't deserve the write-offs, it's that you can't prove it.
Yeah.
And here you click a button. That and the efficiency. I think the first time you go through, from the feedback I've been getting, it's just like anything else. The first time someone goes through the app and puts things in, there's a learning curve.
Hmm.
But it's a very quick learning curve. Though, again, kudos to you and the developers who've made it easier and easier.
Hmm.
And the second time through is really easy because everything's in there.
Hmm.
And so, just so everyone knows, the way we really have gotten to know each other is working on this together. And I look very forward to seeing it broadcast out there. As I finish, I'm working for the CPAs listening in. And by the way, they got excited when I posted on that LinkedIn group the other day. I'm working on a CPE. I'm going to put the draft out. By the way, I didn't tell you about this, so I hope you're good with it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put a draft out before it even gets, or as it gets submitted for certification, because there's that whole bureaucratic process.
Yep.
I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to ask the CPAs to ruthlessly take it apart. Like,
Hmm.
did I miss something? I want you to go at it and show me where I'm wrong, because I will be wrong for a minute
Yeah.
until I'm not. And of course it'll spread. That's of course priceless in and of itself, that it'll get out there and spread. But there was great interest in it. It's one of those rules that people underestimate because there's so much TikTok garbage, which you and I've managed to work through and around, and there's so much work if you're doing it manually.
Mhm.
And so that's what we're looking to get around. So if you're interested, the AugustaRule.com. And if you have a lot of clients, if you're a CPA or a financial planner or someone like that, this would help people, please get a hold of us. Nathaniel, what's a good way to reach you?
Yeah, I mean, the website's still the best, theaugustarule.com. We got all our contact information there. We can sign up for, free strategy calls for clients. We actually have a route for tax professionals to contact us on the website as well, and set them up as a referral partner in the Augusta Rule as well. And we love working with tax professionals because the goal is to put $1 billion back in the pockets of business owners, which includes tax professionals, by 2030. So yeah, the things that you mentioned, John, on the app, I want to emphasize that it's actually a service company, is what we ended up discovering. So we built an app thinking, oh, great, an app will solve this, but it won't. It still won't solve the problems. So it is a software backed service company. So we actually go out and build comparables. The data that allows us to justify a specific rent inside the Augusta Rule still has to be done largely manually. We've tried to the best of our abilities to use various AIs, and it still doesn't achieve the results that we do, which we're seeing typically 50 to 100% larger deductions than any other person doing the Augusta Rule that we've ever encountered through our process. And it's because of the process we've built that complies with the systems that you advise us on. And so still to this day, it's people doing the work, but we have a software that makes it automated. And hopefully at some point software can do it all, but for now it's a software backed service company. And really the unlock is that it's a done for you product, because when I learned the Augusta Rule, it took me, something like 100 hours of research to get comfortable with it, which was ridiculous. And nobody should have to go through that pain if they're not a tax professional. And so that's what we have. You can literally sign up and it's done for you. And it's done for you in a way that's compliant, because John is, if not the country's leading expert on the Augusta Rule, I don't know who is. And we want that to be that defensible for people, like you said, John. So we're doing that. We charge 8% of deductions, if you're wondering. So it just scales with the result we produce for people. And we charge $1,000 deposit upfront because we want to work with people who are serious about putting money back in their pocket. And then it's just billed based on results. So we're signing people up like crazy right now, and we want to keep doing that. And the goal again is those 4 freedoms. We want more people, showing up and creating value, and the people that are creating value to keep more of what they've made, so that they can recycle that and make more value. I mean, that's what makes this country great, and that's what gets us excited to get up in the morning and just keep building teams.
And I have been, I can't find any more source material. I've looked.
Yeah.
I even pulled on the most recent case, the most famous one. I pulled hundreds of pages of IRS cross-examination, the whole court file transcript of when they ask the taxpayer questions, and then the taxpayer's lawyer gets up and asks. That's the cross-examination. I got the IRS briefs. I got their pretrial memoranda, went through it and figured out what do they target. And I've never heard of anyone going
Yeah.
to that extent. So it's been painfully slow, but I think I've got it. I don't know what else I can go find
That's
in
great.
terms of.
That's the beauty of such a niche, right? It's such a narrow point of the tax code, but yet all these other areas intersect onto it. And I think that's where your brilliance shines, is you're able to understand how all the threads attach to the sweater, as it were.
And
So
that's why we're willing to offer the audit guarantee.
yes,
We will.
audit
It,
protection guarantee.
yeah. Yeah. Well, what we promised to do, I mean,
Yeah.
we're not an insurance company.
Yep.
So we're not going to guarantee a specific result. But if you do certain things, if you follow best practices, which we outline very clearly,
Hmm.
if you follow best practices, we are willing to defend it
Hmm.
at our expense.
Yep.
And you guys that have been around me know what that means, because I don't ever offer that. That's always just a, yeah, if you get audited, come along, I'll bill you happily
Hmm.
and represent you well, or tell you if you have a terrible case and you should really settle.
Hmm.
And our goal here is to make sure you have a great case. In fact, my goal Nathaniel, I told you once about there's this software that determines salaries, although there is, again, just like with the Augusta Rule, there are humans behind the scene for the same reason, by the way. There are some subjective factors that really AI is just not there yet. And maybe
Yeah.
one day it will be, but it's not there yet. But RC reports,
Hmm.
they do salary studies for S corporations. And it's come to my attention just talking to auditors and other tax professionals that when you show up in an audit with RC reports, the audit's close to done when it comes to that particular subject. In other words, is the salary reasonable or not? I I'm actually sort of wishing for audits
Hmm.
because I think we will find ourselves in the position that it'll get known that our comps are good and they're documented and everything else. There's more than just the comps, but that's one of the harder parts to do.
Hmm.
And that after a while, it's just known inside the service that when they see this, okay, we're good.
Yep.
So knock on wood. Nathaniel, is there anything else you want to close on? I mean, there's always so much more. I know I miss things. I mean, I know you
Oh,
like boomsticks and you're disciplined about working out. And we have a common vice. Granted, I think I take it a little further. You are much more moderate, probably goes back to some of your philosophy and your biblical teachings. But in that vein, I have to ask presently, what is your favorite bourbon at this moment?
yeah, no, you introduced me to really to bourbon. I mean, it's not that I hadn't had it before, but in terms of the nicer ones, and my favorite bourbon is probably going to sound like a trope right now, but it's Pappy 23. So my wife was fortunate enough to win a bottle on lottery here in Idaho, which means you can actually buy it at retail, which is a fraction of what it sells for on the market. So we fortunate enough to have one of those, and I really enjoy that. Um, but I haven't really found any rare picks lately. I think I showed you a Remus Repeal Reserve 25, and that was not super rare, but it's hard to find out here. And I got a bottle of that. That was pretty good. Um, but I've actually been more on a mezcal and tequila kick. So I need some exposure to mezcal and tequila. That's of the level that you've brought me with bourbon. That's what I'm currently looking for.
Got
And
it. Well,
and you're not a lush man. You enjoy it, and I enjoy it too, and that's the point. So
yeah, my 2 ounces at 4
yeah,
p.m. Although
come
that's
on.
been every other day. I used to do it every day, but I'm measuring sleep to see what happens when I skip a day. And when I skip a full day, I sleep even better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just experimenting on myself because other people get really upset when I do it to them.
That's
But
great. No, I think
well, I
we didn't really say. I mean, we basically talked about all the ways I screwed up, but I probably should mention, and it's not prideful to say things that are true that edify others. And so, we have a self-managing construction company that has something like 10 regional and national awards. It's incredible, and that's speaking about that team. They are so good.
so
And
what are
then
your awards? What awards did you
these
get
are
by
yeah, these are national design awards. So for how good of a design it is, or they're awards based a group of other contractors, like 8 or 12 other contractors, will look at all these projects that are submitted and say, by our standard in terms of execution, budget, timeliness, beauty, this is the top. So we've got 10 of those, and then we acquired a window and door company, and we own and operate that as well. And then I've built and sold a roofing company, and now we're working on the Augusta Rule, and we're also working on launching a company that we want to have a big part in turning the trades around in the country that we're calling Apollos Build. So I'm saying all that because we talked about building teams. I actually have built more than one team, and we've done it successfully, and we're doing it on repeat. And the common theme is that we want to be, a hero to business owners and entrepreneurs in one way or another in all those teams. And so that's what gets me excited. And I love to connect with and talk with other entrepreneurs. And I love working with you, John, because you're an expert in your area, and the skills that I lack, you have. And it sounds like the skills that you lack, I have. And that's what makes, the best collaborations, is you have complementary skills. So happy to meet other entrepreneurs, happy to bless people through our businesses, and happy to help people put more money back in their pockets.
Yeah, and if you see Nathaniel at one of my events, he was at the last one. I'm sure he'll be at others. He'll have a big banner there. But if you pull him aside as you gathered, it's how do I say this? It's not to minimize everything you just said. You're a great entrepreneur, and that's a great thing to talk about. But what I love is you're a good deal more besides. And so if you guys want to have some fun with them and have a wee talk and maybe a wee sip of something, he's a fascinating guy to talk with. He really is. I got to say, my kids really enjoyed being around you, Johnny in particular. With, of course, he's in construction as
Yeah.
well, and you have a very similar belief system. So it was something he enjoyed. So if you guys see him at one of the events, pull him aside. You'll find he's extraordinarily sociable. And there we are.
There we
Nathaniel,
are.
any final words? Just
Oh, thanks for taking the time to have a conversation, and hope this blesses the listeners. Merry
take a
Christmas.
chow.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. Take
Yep.
care.
Yeah.